Hello, and welcome to the light. Let's begin. Thank you for joining us for another Superfuse video on the Elementalist series. This one is going to be covering the fire skills and the fire tree. The fire tree is just like the ice tree. As you see here, it's a double helix. All the trees are going to be double helixes. There are a few unique differences between fire and ice. Fire does not permit the same level of defense because, as you see here, there is no strength bonus. Ice, however, gets a defense bonus. Both of them get a reflex bonus. And while ice gets the defense bonus, here we have a greater mana bonus. You see here we only get 2 per level. 2 times 30 would only make 60. And so here, double the bonus. There are a few key differences. In my personal opinion, from what I've seen, I believe ice does the more damage. Equipment does help with that. There are several uniques that will help with your fire journey. Chief among them are going to be a unique top, which will increase your fire damage and increase your cast speed if I remember right. However, as I recall, it does not increase defense to the near degree that this particular piece of armor would. So as a result, I don't have it and don't use it. I have found it, but a friend ended up needing it, so I gave it to them. No big deal. Now, Night Stalkers is another unique that I recommend just having in general, especially if you're going to be using projectiles, aka the Elementalist. One more one that goes great with those are these. These give 40% movement speed. There's another set that gives 40% movement speed versus the 30 that this one gives. However, on this particular character, I'm not too focused on the speed. I've got other things to make up for it. The belt, I recommend getting something with high sight range, just so your projectiles have that distance of view to target easier. These knee pads are not the ones I want, but they'll do fine for now. I'll keep grinding. The Outer Grasp, they're wonderful gloves that give you energy leech. That's the whole reason I have them. The spell damage is a bonus, but at this point I already do way too much damage in general, so it's not really too much the matter. Another one I really love is this here. They give cast speed, which is the real reason why I like them. The energy leech and the power are just bonuses. Staff I'm using is called the Hungar. It has 30% to cast speed. Now, as you notice, there's a theme. I'm trying to go for maximum cast and maximum speed in general, to the best of what I can get now. There is a minimum I'm shooting for cast speed. I want as much as I can get for ice because you cast slower. However, for fire you don't have that same issue. It doesn't take as long to cast. I would love to know the reason why they set it up that way, but I suspect it's just to go along with the typical setup that you find for ice. Ice is usually cast slower versus fire, which is almost always quick and high damage and dun 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 dun. Whereas ice is more a little bit of control, moderate amount of defense, low speed, high damage, high crit. Fire usually is damage over time, damage, and speed. So you get a million balls in the air and you hit them a bunch and they land on fire and yada yada. Okay, so what we're all here for is the skill displays. So Torch is a wonderful help you get your energy back thing. This particular ability has a cooldown. It lights you on fire, which will allow enemies that get nearby you to be lit on to not necessarily be lit on fire, but they will take damage when they hit you. And I personally think that this should be an automatic light the enemy on fire sort of thing. They should have like a status chance section underneath the fire damage where it says, chance to inflict status some percent, right? This particular ability should have a 100% chance to inflict heat status damage. When you put anything on it, you can increase that chance, but I'm sure it has its own static chance, and I believe that is measured in effectiveness. However, I could be wrong. That being said, let's move on. We've got Combust. This is a wonderful ability, and it just makes fire damage. This particular one makes a ring of fire. Okay, so this particular skill makes a ring immediately, as it is, it will make a ring just around you. However, adding certain augments on the skill, called fuses, you can cause it to make a ring not on yourself, but in other places. It comes at a cost. It costs radius and energy while also reducing your overall damage, making it, in my opinion, not worth it. To show you what this skill does, we're going to go here and press that. So that's all that happens around you. This area is a little smaller than what would be if it was around you. The damage on these two abilities, as they are right now, are negligible, and in high level combat, as they are right now, will not kill anything. If you're concerned about that sort of thing, to the best of my knowledge, you're not really going to be using any skill but this one here, which is why it's down at the end. We'll cover it last. Alright, so on to the next skill. The next skill in the line is called Blaze. So this is a fun one I've seen people use. You have a 3-set combo that is repeatable and continues to repeat. To the best of my knowledge, it is a series of kicks. We're going to show you firsthand what that looks like. I'm just taking a look here and seeing if I can't expand the effect radius of sorts. Although we can't expand the radius, we can instead make it to where you dash to wherever you are targeting. So what that'll look like, I'll show you here. You're going to hold shift and you're going to press E, and it makes you dash. Series of kicks. It looks like it's just a 2-kick combo. The ice one has a 3-attack combo that you can do. That's really the only difference. The ice one also has a chance to slow enemies, so you got CC there. This one, there's no CC with the exception of knockback, but also the ice has that, so it's not distinct. Okay. Alright. Next on the docket is Inferno. Now this one I've seen people use, and I hear it's quite fun. I've used it a couple times. I didn't really find it too much fun. If you build it wrong, it will break your game every time. It will make even the lowest graphics on here to be unplayable, because when you have the screen filled up with flames, the effects bog the game down. If you have enemies in the area, the effects will start to glitch, and the enemies will also glitch. I've seen them run through you. I've seen them run through you. I've seen many glitches affect this particular setup. Now, let's show you what it can do. Earlier, in my last video, I showed you this particular skill with ice, the ice wall, and it went wonderful. I was a little confused at the time on why I ended up with... oh, too many. Why I ended up with the box instead of the circle like I wanted. Turns out each one of these concaves gives a 45-degree angle turn. You can stick 3 on, which means you can make potentially a triangle on yourself with a single cast. And if you do it correctly with enough wall length, you can have a double triangle covering you, doubling the damage. Now, that is a wonderful ability. The unfortunate drawback is that while you can indeed make it double cover you, it's not going to stop the enemies or slow them down. So just think about that when you're doing it. My thought is I wish they could add some knockback or something on here. That would make it a little bit more usable. As it is right now, if an enemy is close enough to attack you, my philosophy is the farther away, the deader the enemy. And a dead enemy is the only good enemy. Oh, come on. Now, in that vein of thought, what we're going to do here is I'm going to show you that triangle we were talking about. We're just going to get this as long as we can get it, which I could possibly do longer. However, not at the current moment. So let's show you this wall. It is not a wall, it is a box. Okay. Now if you really want to wig out your game, then something you can do is put this little ditty on there. Also, what that experiment we just did told me is that 3 of these is absolutely unnecessary. It can only go to 90 degrees. So the damage loss in here is not worth it, nor is the extra cost. As we're standing right now, it is 28.7. Without further ado, here we are. It makes it creep. With one cast, you're perfectly fine. It's when you do multiple casts that you start having problems. Notice how we've got some parts still on fire even though we are done casting? It causes the game to glitch. And the more you use this ability, the more glitches you're going to have. But, I've got to say, it does look cool. By the way, I'm still casting. But as you can see, I finished casting, and all of a sudden, we got it out of nowhere. So it's a little buggy. That's assuming you want to use this sort of skill. Again, I don't recommend it. I don't think it's worth it. Meteor, this is another skill that I have yet to get to work the way I want. I found homing to kind of work. Since they changed how homing works, it doesn't work the same. Now, as you can see, there are many skills that I'm missing, like particularly in the on-kill section. This one here, I've got all the ones I want, the shrapnels and whatnot. There is quite a few things you can do with Meteor. I think that this impact radius shouldn't do damage reduction. In fact, I don't like how they put damage reduction on every skill, it feels like. Or, sorry, every fuse, it feels like. Like here, it's minus 40% meteor damage, which is a little steep if you ask me. 4%, yeah, sure, that would be cool, but 40 is a little steep. I've only got 2 of those. We're going to do the Firestorm in one moment. I want you to see what it's like to cast this. So, pretty big areas with those 2 impact radiuses on it. Really quick at falling. So, it is feasible. Am I currently able to do it? Like, am I currently able to make this particular skill work for me? No, I'm not. That's one part of me lacking particular skills, and one part I don't really have the drive to do it because I don't use fire. I'm only using fire in this particular instance for the show of this particular event. Something that wasn't working before when I was playing earlier was this particular skill. You saw that there is not really much of a change in speed. It looks to me like it just is casting the exact same duration. I could be biased. Or not duration. It looks like they're falling down at the same rate. Now, an interesting skill is this Meteor Storm. You can have, sorry, not Meteor Storm, Firestorm. You can have 3 of them. I don't know why you would. That is a 60% damage reduction and a 60% increase energy cost, with little to no benefit. We're already maxed out at level 3 without this on there. So, is it worth it? I don't know. I don't really think so. It does happen to have a litany of little fireballs that come out. I bet that if you had all of them on there with some homing, well, proper homing, it would work to be effective at killing enemies, and I'm sure that you could kill enemies rather quickly. It wouldn't be near the speed that you'd get from using Fireball. However, it would indeed be a good way to kill things. Okay, so let's go find some enemies real quick. Now, something unique that happens is sometimes in places like this you can have enemies just randomly appear. as if the game was a little too late to load them in. Now, you notice how we're doing 20 or so damage, even though it said we were going to do 200? But I'm willing to bet you that if you were to sit down and math this out, you would have done 200 damage per set of volleys. So every time you cast, your total damage is going to be 200. It works very similar with all the other skills. There are a few exceptions. Shrapnel and things that are post impact effects don't seem to be bound by that total damage cap, and it makes it way easier. The most efficient way to make use of shrapnel is only having one, maybe two splits, and then you can max out your shrapnel and max out your post-contact skills. That's why I don't believe there's very many, and skills I mean fuses. That's why I don't believe there are very many post contact deals here. As you can see, I've only got 6 that I've found. However, those 6 that I've found do work rather well. Good luck getting 3 shrapnels that do 6 shards, though. It's been a pain for me to find. And then post-contact, of course, would include these split, pierce. Split would be fine. Fork, again, would be fine. I do recommend you put sync on. In this particular instance, the double fork could be more beneficial than the triple fork. Now, does all of that really matter? No, not at all. The reason being is that at the end of the game, where I'm at now, double, triple, I could fill the screen with fireballs, everything's going to die regardless. Do I think that early on you should use a 2 fork or a 3 fork? Really depends on you and whether or not you're pushing much higher level enemies than you are. The game limits you, from what I've seen, to 2, 3, some rare cases 4 or 5 levels higher than you, with the exception of when you're playing with someone else. But on your own, it at most will go 5 levels higher than you, and I believe when I saw that it was a boss. Fork away. Now, in saying that, the fork skill is limited to only having one of the fuses on here. You can have 1 sinks, as you can see down in the bottom right corner. I don't necessarily believe in having a pierce on there. From my testing, pierce doesn't necessarily help. I do, however, wholeheartedly believe having 1 or 2 ricochets on everyone. The reason being, if it hits a wall or an enemy and bounces off, it still does damage. And on top of that, it'll bounce off and home to the next one, provided you have this homing on. That doesn't just affect the initial cast. It affects the second level of cast, which is on contact, and the expiration cast, or the shrapnel. It will, all of these, with homing, will end up hitting an enemy, which is where your damage comes. Okay, so I put some things on real quick. You got homing, sync, fork, bounce, shrapnels. I put on 2 shrapnels, just like I said you probably should. You can max out the number of shrapnels you have on here. I don't care for it. It ends up lagging the game a little bit too much for me, and so I try to just kind of minimize it. Something else you can do is put on projectile range. These are wonderful. They add attack power or damage power, and they add range. And they add minimal amounts of energy cost. Some unique things to the fireball skill is Fireball Bombard. It makes them just, you launch them overhead. That's about it. You can have a great impact radius with these. You can increase said impact radius with the same thing you've increased a lot of stuff with. using this particular fuse. Another thing you can do is Fireball Barrage. I believe I've seen a lot of people use this. I don't necessarily believe I would use it because that spell damage and the projectile speed reduction, not really too keen on. I hear they're worth it. Again, not too keen on. Everybody builds their own way. Projectile size, I've seen people use it again. I'm not going to, just because the homing is going to take care of that. Now, if we were to go through and there was a fuse that would make all the fireballs fire in a straight line, parallel to each other, then I would indeed encourage that, and that would be a particular instance in which I would add on Fireball Barrage, because you could easily throw that down a hallway, just continuously cast down a hallway, and just murder everything in the hallway. There are some things that'll dash at you, and in those particular instances, knockback would be useful, but knockback is not something I believe you can have on here. I don't see it, so it's a fair assumption. So, without further ado, let's put on some of these projectile ranges. Oh, we've maxed it out too. The level over here is maxed out. I wish I had a third projectile range. Looks like I still have stuff I want to farm out. So let's go show you the rudimentary damage with the improper gear on. So it does pretty well. Those bounces, you see, they help. It doesn't look like they're heat seeking or seeking them out in general, but the range really helps. There was stuff way off screen that I was hitting, and they were dying. We saw the health bars appear here. I'm not a big fan of fire, just because I see a lot of other people use it, and that's not to say it's bad. I just prefer ice. That brings us to the end of our video. Thank you for joining us in the light, and have a beautiful day.